חפש על מוות. לא, לא יראה, לא יראה. אוי אוי אוי, אוי אוי אוי, כי אתה עימדי. אוי אוי אוי, אוי אוי אוי, כי אתה עימדי. לדוד השם אורי ואישי, אורי ואישי
What a beautiful song! What a beautiful song! That is Shweki. Shweki singing a psalm of David and saying, Hashem, God is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? My holy sisters and brothers, Shavua Tov, a good vach. We're coming out of the long holiday period that began at the beginning of Elul, the beginning of the last month of the Hebrew year. It continued into Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, a few days to build the Sukkah, Sukkot, the final days of Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, the VIP lounge, as it were, the day of special intimacy with God, and then the final day of the holiday, which began last night and continued through today, Simchas Torah. The time of our joy comes to an end with a massive celebration of the Torah, as Heinrich Heine called it, the portable homeland of the Jewish people. My friends, I have something to share with you. This was a very special holiday season for me. At the very end, Hashem, God, blessed me with an insight that I want to share with you. It's something I've never heard before, but I feel like I've been saying it for years, wishing it, believing it, sharing it with you. Let's see what you think. Let's light up the darkness. Who is going to be with us as we come into a new week, a new year, with something I think so special, so special. Helena Hamala with us from Finland, Mark Godet from Utah, Melissa from Great Neck, New York, Nancy Brundemel Wright from North Carolina, Guy from Dayton, Rochelle from Modesto, Mohammedin from Pakistan. Welcome, Mohammedin. Harold from Oregon, Roberta from Yucatan and Mexico. Bienvenida. And Ayora from Merced, California, Linda from North Texas. If this is your first time tuning in, let us know so we can welcome you. Bill Eldridge, shalom from Arkansas, ready to unwind after a busy day, cooking for a big family dinner with a little study. Eric, shalom from Annapolis, Maryland. Nancy loves the music. Wasn't that an amazing song? Beautiful song from Shweki. That's on YouTube, and it's called... what's it called? It's called Ledavit, I think. He calls it Ledavit, right? Ledavit. So it's called Ledavit. It refers to Psalm 27 and 23. So he's combining lyrics from 27 and 23. Matt Matthews says, good morning and blessings. Ruhi says, hello. Ray from Krum, Texas. Carolyn loves Psalm 27. Ruhi loves my energy. Thank you, Ruhi. Sergius from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Welcome, Sergius. Or Sergius, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Stephen from Dover. Jill from Willamette, Illinois. Carolyn from North Carolina. Diana from San Diego. Lawrence from Eugene. Natalie from Idaho. Honey from Alabama. Am I going to catch up? Patrick from Palm Springs. Leanne from Pennsylvania. Stephanie says Shavua Tov. And Pamela Wilson is a first-timer. Welcome, Pamela, from New York City. Over on the YouTube side, we're maybe lagging a little. No one's there yet. You know, I didn't have that light on. Hold on. There we go. Maybe shed some light on the situation. Okay. All right. This is special. I believe this is special. Okay. We're coming out of this holiday period by just having finished Simchas Torah. Simchat Torah, joy in Torah. The final day of the holiday season that began 7 weeks ago is Simchas Torah, the joy of Torah. The culmination of this whole period is the joy that we take in Torah. And in fact, it has been our custom for the last about 1,400 years. The holiday is actually not mentioned in the Talmud because it began among the late sages of the Talmudic period. And it wasn't instituted by the sages. It sort of began among the people, this tradition that we would renew the cycle of reading the whole Torah every year, and we would read the last chapter of the Torah, the death of Moses, after the blessings of Moses upon the tribes of Israel, right at the edge as they were about to enter the promised land. And then it says there never arose again a prophet in Israel like Moshe, like Moses, who spoke with God and was a conduit for us to give us the Torah from God to Israel. The last word of the Torah is Israel, and then we immediately go right to the beginning of the Torah and begin again in the beginning of God's creation, when all was null and void and the Spirit of God hovered above the waters. God said, I'm paraphrasing obviously, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And we begin again with the creation story, chapter 1 of the Torah. On this first day of the Torah, we read all of chapter 1, which includes the 6 days of creation. This year, I noticed something that I never noticed before, and when I went looking for commentary on it, I couldn't find any. God says, what is God's first commandment? It's a universal commandment. It's a commandment given to all the humans. And the commandment is, be fruitful and multiply. In Hebrew, peru urevu. Peru, be fruitful, is the verb of pri, fruit. Like when we say berei pri hagefen, we're making a blessing on the fruit of the vine, that which is wine. So pri is fruit, the verb peru, be fruitful. Urevu, increase, multiply. Now, these two words, peru urevu, are always taken together. Be fruitful and multiply. And so when you go looking for commentary on this phrase in the Torah through all the Jewish sources, I haven't checked them all for sure. I'm sure somebody commented on this. But strangely, in the 6 or 7 I was able to check, because I have just books in my house, major commentaries, basically they take the two words together. Peru urevu, be fruitful and multiply. Generally, what they talk about is that this is a commandment for men. Men are commanded to reproduce. And then those who follow Shammai say a man has not fulfilled his obligation until he's fathered 2 boys. And according to Hillel, a man has not, a person, but really a Jew, has not fulfilled his obligation until he has fathered a boy and a girl. I'm actually not sure if that applies to all humans. I guess it must, because the commandment was given to all humans. But what they're talking about is the commandment to make sure that there's going to be more people, because God said people should increase and there should be as many people in the world as the world can sustain. And so it's all about creating more people. In some of the Hasidic commentaries, like the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, or in the Lubavitcher tradition, I'm not sure if he said it first, that when you teach Torah to people and connect them to God, it's as if you're creating them anew. And so there's a spiritual dimension to this idea of being fruitful and multiplying, that you not only make new humans by being married and raising children, but also you make new humans spiritually by connecting them to their source. But even in that case, the two verbs, peru revu, be fruitful and multiply, are taken as a unit. I say it would have been enough to say revu. It would have been enough to say increase. Make sure there's more of you. Make sure there's more of you humans, that you humans should spread out into the world and make the world a better place and beautify it and bring the blessings of humanity to everywhere that humans can be. It would have been enough to say revu, multiply. Why did it say peru, urevu? Be fruitful and multiply. If it could have been said just multiply, then that word, the first word, Peru, is begging to be interpreted. That's a standard Talmudic principle. Now, we don't just throw in new interpretations. So me saying that this is how I see it, it's just Sal. It's just me. Until I find a tradition that backs up what I'm saying, I can only say that it's something that I've observed and that I find spectacularly interesting. Because what does it mean to Peru, to be fruitful? What does it mean to be fruitful? Now, we get a hint when we look at the fact it appears in Genesis 1:28 when God creates the humans and says to them, be fruitful and multiply. But that's not the first time that God says, be fruitful and multiply. In fact, when God says it on the sixth day to the humans, he is uttering those words for the second time. He said it first on the fifth day. On the fifth day, God created the giants of the sea, the great ones, and every being that is alive and that moves about and which swarms within the waters according to their kinds, and all the birds with wings that fly through the air. On the fifth day, God creates the sea creatures and the birds. And then he says and then it says, Yivarech Oisam Elohim lemor Peru Urevu. And God blessed them, meaning the sea creatures and the birds, saying Peru Urevu. He blessed them, saying, be fruitful and increase. That's how God spoke when he created the sea creatures and the birds. After God creates the humans on the sixth day, male and female, he created them together. This is the first story of creation of the human. He created them in God's image, and then male and female, he created them. And then it says, Yivarech Oisam Elohim, the same three words that begin, and God blessed them. But then, instead of saying, be fruitful and multiply, it says it differently. It says, Yivarech Oisam Elohim, God blessed them, Vayomer lahem Elohim Peru Uravu. It says, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. The birds and the fish and the birds, the sea creatures and the birds were created by God's word. Everything was created by God's word. God spoke everything into being. And then said about them, saying, be fruitful and multiply. But to the humans, after they were created by that God's word and were blessed, he blessed the fish, the sea creatures and the birds, and he blessed the humans. But after blessing the humans, the form of their blessing then took the words, and God spoke to them. Not just saying, be fruitful and multiply, but God spoke to them, commanding them, be fruitful and multiply. What is different about the humans that they weren't just made to be fruitful and multiply, but that they were told to be fruitful and multiply? They were commanded. And of course, the difference between humans and the other animals is that humans can be spoken to and understand what they're being told. The humans were commanded as a blessing to them. And this is why we say when we make blessings like blessing the sukkah or making a blessing during Sukkot over the fruit. This is an esrog, the fruit that is such a big part of the sukkah celebration. Right? There are four species: the esrog, the date palm, the myrtle, and the willow. They represent the four kinds of Jews. The fruit represents the fullest embodiment of the Jew who has both Torah, who is educated to be a Jew, and mitzvahs, who fulfills his obligations, fulfills his commandments, and does good deeds for people. This is a fully realized person. What does it mean to be fruitful? It means that you receive the command of Hashem to be fruitful, and you produce fruit in this world. Every human is a tree producing fruit. A few days ago, we learned in our Gemara, in our Talmud, we're studying Eruvin. By the way, where are we? We're on Eruvin, the third volume of the third tractate of the Talmud, the third volume. It's called Eruvin. It's the laws of joining courtyards and changing the Shabbos boundary. It's the whole laws of the eruv. We've been talking about it for 61 really, but we're on page 62. We are on page 62 of Tractate Eruvin. We're beginning a new chapter, chapter 6, with the first Mishna. A few days ago, we learned how important is Torah study, how beautiful is Torah study. One of the reasons that Torah study is so beautiful is because every time you come to the Torah, it is like a fig tree. There is some fruit somewhere in that tree which the day you come to it is perfectly ripe and ready. A fig tree is always producing, and so it has fruits in all different states of readiness. Just started, fully ripe, ready to pick today, overripe, should fall already, rotten, gone. But at any day that you come to it, there is a perfectly ripe fruit waiting to be picked by you, because the Torah is fruitful. My friends, I have been talking so often, I talk to you, I say to you, we don't have souls, we are souls. Every single one of us was sent here on a mission that only we can fulfill. There's something we can give the world that only we can give, only you can give. You were sent here to do that job. Now this understanding is being refined. You were sent here and told, you agreed with God, He gave you a commandment, and you heard it, and then you came here, and part of the deal was that you would forget that you are a soul, because in this world, God's presence is hidden, so you can't remember that absolute certainty that you had when you were in God's presence as an eternal soul. But you come here, and you're reborn as a human, and you're going to have all the experiences here. But the last thing you heard before you came here was, be fruitful. What does it mean to be fruitful? My friends, all of us are fruitful. Everyone is bearing fruit. Everyone is bearing fruit. Some trees are scanty. They don't have that many fruits. Not that many good deeds. Not that many fulfilled obligations, but some. Everybody is bearing fruit here. Everybody's doing something good, something that only they can do, something that's a blessing to the people around them. Now, when you start asking yourself, how can I be more fruitful? Now you're going to start becoming a bigger tree, bearing more fruit, ripe fruit for everybody. I came to this because I was asking myself during the holiday, I want to do better. I know that sometimes I could be working, I could be teaching, I could be writing, I could be moving our projects forward, I could be fundraising when I need to be fundraising. I do a lot, I work a lot, I do a lot with Nina, we do so much. But there are times when I could do better. And I was thinking to myself, well, if being as productive as we can be in this world, if it's a commandment, and when I don't do it, it's like, neglecting a commandment, which is a sin, right? Like if you're commanded to do something and you don't do it, that's an avera. We have teshuvah and we're able to overcome that. Don't be so afraid to say that some things are a sin and that we want to do better and atone for those sins and do better. That's what we've just come out of this whole holiday period of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Examining our deeds last year, committing to do better, asking for forgiveness for all the times that we let God down. And I was thinking to myself, could I be more productive if I thought that when I failed to be productive, I was violating a Torah precept? And I was thinking, well, what precept is it? Not being as productive as you can be. Is that some kind of a sin? What is the commandment that is being violated? That was my question. And the answer is the first commandment. Be fruitful. Be fruitful. You don't have to be so hard on yourself because you're already bearing fruit. And you should be confident and inspired because if you look at all the fruit that you've borne in this world, all the good deeds that you've done, all the ways that you've touched other people, all the times you've been there for others, all the things that you've created and given to others, and all the causes that you've supported, and all the times that you were there for somebody who was down and needed you, and all the times that you showed up. Those are all fruits that you have produced. So you should be very encouraged and inspired and strengthened by the fact that God has made you a great fruit tree. You're already fruitful. The question is, Could you be more fruitful? Could your fruit be bigger, broader, sweeter, more available to more people? Can you be more fruitful? If so, then do it. Know you can. Realize that when I always say to you, well, you're here to fulfill a mission. If you don't know what your mission is, then your mission is figure out what is your mission. Well, how do you figure out what is your mission? Ask this question. What are the fruits I've already borne in this world? Where is the area in this world that I tend to add the most fruit into this world, that I bear fruit for others? That's something to look at carefully. If there are areas where you should be bearing fruit and you're bearing none, that's something to look at. But the question is, how will I be more fruitful? And once you start asking that question, that applies to everything. I'm going to meet my friend. I'm going to meet a business associate. I'm going to go on a trip. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to study Torah. Before every activity you embark on, ask the question, what's going to make it more fruitful? What will make it fruitful? If we get together and all we do is exchange gossip, was it fruitful? If I get together with my family and I want to, I want something special to happen, a good time, a memory to be made, but we end up getting together and I'm annoyed that this one and that one's annoyed that this one, and we're annoyed at each other and we squabble and then we just kind of part company. Was it fruitful? I'm going to visit a friend. Did I bring him some new truth? Did I share something of value? Was it fruitful? Was it fruitful? Is it fruitful? Will it bear fruit? That's the question we can ask on everything. Will it bear fruit? Will it make me more educated so I can bear more fruit for others? Will it make me kinder so I can bear more fruit for others? Will it make me more diligent, more organized, less lazy, a better manager of time, a better manager of people, a better employee of someone else's time, a better guest of somebody else's place and time? Am I being fruitful? Peru, urevu. Peru is a different verb, a separate verb. Be fruitful and multiply can't be one thing, it's two things. There's two words there. It's not just make more people. It's be fruitful yourself. That's what I'm coming out of the holiday with. I'm very energized and inspired by this understanding. I don't even know where it's going yet. It's brand new. But I want to hear what you think about it. I want to hear your comments on it. And I think you'll be hearing more from me about it, because when we talk about being on mission, you were sent here to do it. You are a soul. You were sent here to do a mission. Your mission is to be fruitful. What are the fruits that you're going to bear? Ask yourself, you can start by asking, what fruits are you already bearing? What fruits are you already bearing for others? Okay. Now let's get into what we're doing here. All right. So we are now opening chapter 6 of tractate Eruvin. Now we're starting to understand how the Talmud is organized, right? Why do we start in the middle of explorations, in the middle of lectures, in the middle of points? Like the volumes should start with what is an eruv? Why do we have an eruv? How do we make an eruv? But instead we started right in the middle of the topic. How do we adjust an alley that joins courtyards so that we can carry in the alley and the people in the courtyards can carry out into that alley? That's totally in the middle of the argument. Why start there? The Talmud was compiled and arranged around the Mishna by Rav Ashi and Ravina. Just like the Mishnah was compiled by Rebbe. In both cases, they were arranging a body of conversations and stories and law and discussions of law for educated Torah-loving Jews. They were arranging all this material for people who were very educated and had most of it memorized. So they open on a topic that is interesting to them and that sort of interweaves and spider webs out to all the different topics that are involved in the master topic, as it were. They don't start at the beginning, and they do that on purpose. They start in the middle so that a teacher is teaching the student will have to lay out a bunch of principles, and then we're going to go over them over and over and over again. And then gradually we come to the heart of the matter. And so here in chapter 6, finally, of tractate Eruvin, we're coming to the heart of the matter. We're going back to the discussion of joining courtyards so that we can carry in a place where we would otherwise not be allowed to carry on Shabbos. We've talked a lot about that subject in terms of we need an enclosure that's going to group these private domains into a larger private domain so that we can carry throughout that enlarged private domain on Shabbos. That's the sort, we've taken it as a given, and we said that the reason we want to do that is so that we can enjoy Shabbos. The commandment in the Torah is enjoy Shabbos. Remember Shabbos and guard Shabbos. When we remember Shabbos, like we make kiddush, we make motzi, we do positive things in order to enjoy it. And when we guard Shabbos, we restrict ourselves from doing things that will violate the negative commandments. In other words, we don't do work on Shabbos, and we make sure that we don't do work on Shabbos. But the laws of eruv are all about rabbinic decrees that enable us to do what we want to do so we can enjoy Shabbos more without breaking Torah laws and other rabbinic laws. Now, the question isn't how do we make an enclosure. We've already dealt with this question. How do we make a proper enclosure so that a bunch of people can carry within this private domain on Shabbos? Now the question is, why did King Solomon, who in many ways is the wisest teacher of Torah who ever lived, right? Moses was the greatest prophet. Akiva was a teacher of Torah, said to be on the level of Moses. It was King Solomon who is credited with being the wisest man who ever lived. And why was he so wise? Because God blessed him with that wisdom. He was born wise, and then just after he became king, he had a dream, and God said to him, I can either give you the greatest riches and power that any king ever had, or I can give you wisdom. And King Solomon said, I'll take wisdom. And God said, good choice, I'll give you both. And so Solomon was blessed with, infinite, or not infinite, but as much as a person, as much as a human can have, tremendous wisdom. That, of course, made him the chief rabbi in his time. And it was in his time that he ruled, and it was promulgated in the kingdom, that a person who lives in a house that shares a courtyard with another house, if he leaves his house on Shabbos and he's carrying something, it's just like somebody who leaves his property, his private property, and enters the public domain. He is prohibited from carrying from a private domain to a public domain. And even though this is definitely a private domain, it's a private courtyard, but it's a duplex. There's two homes in that courtyard. So other people have a right to walk through that courtyard separate from his right to walk there. That's going to be treated like a public domain, and unless they make a correction, they can't carry on their own courtyard that they share. The two houses share that courtyard. What is the correction? They must form an eruv. How do they form an eruv? They both deposit bread in a container, let's say a basket, and the two of them make a joint basket with two meals in it and keep that basket in one of the homes. Doesn't matter which, but now they've joined together to have a spiritual partnership in the land that they share legally. Right? They both have a right to walk through that courtyard because they have two homes there. Now they have a spiritual partnership that enables them to both carry from their houses out into the courtyard and from the courtyard into their houses. Likewise, if several courtyards like this open into an alley, they will not be able to carry in that alley because other people have a right to carry there unless all of them join in that spiritual partnership with the alley. As we learned at the very beginning of this tractate, they need to make a correction to show that they've joined in it. And there they have to make a marker at the head of the alley, a cross post or a side post. But the spiritual partnership is required. And if in a courtyard, let's say there's 4 houses there, and let's say that 3 houses have joined in the eruv, but the 4th didn't. He was supposed to, he forgot. He didn't join in the eruv. Now there's a person who has rights to walk in the courtyard, who's not joined in the eruv. Not only can he not carry from his house into the courtyard on Shabbos, but neither can the other 3. He restricts them. It's like they're still a public domain because one of them is not in the partnership. So none of them can carry from objects from their house out into the courtyard or from the courtyard into their houses because this one hasn't joined with them. You can only join in the eruv before Shabbos. If it comes to Shabbos and they realize this guy didn't join, can they carry? Is there any way? Is there a fix? Yes. That guy can say to them, I relinquish my rights. I relinquish my rights to do something. It's not like he can't walk through it anymore. Unclear whether he can carry in it anymore. I guess he can't because he can't. He's not part of the eruv. But he can relinquish his leasehold rights, his ownership rights for the purpose of Shabbos to the others. And I guess he won't have a right to carry there. He won't have a right to pile things up out there. He's giving away some kind of a right he's relinquishing. He can do that on Shabbos, and then the others can carry in the courtyard, even though the one who joined in the eruv cannot. So that's called bitul hareshus, nullifying your rights in the property. The first Mishnah that we're going to look at here in this chapter 6 is already getting into sort of like the middle of the discussion again. We're going to go to a kind of a tough, challenging case rather than explain this whole history. But you need to understand that history of how it became, right? People need to join in courtyards because King Solomon decreed that a joint courtyard has the smell, the aroma, things in common with the public domain because other people have a right to walk there. And so these people must enter the spiritual partnership. All of them have to join or none of them will be permitted to carry from their homes into the courtyard. And one thing you could think about this is when the children of Israel entered Israel, the vast majority of them were farmers. They all got plots of land and farms, and this just didn't matter because they all had sort of single-family homes on single-family plots of land, except the Levites. The Levites were given cities. They would become city dwellers. I'm a Levite, so we right away were moving into the cities. But even in the cities, it's like we had homes with yards. It was much smaller than the farm properties out in the country, but there were more single-family plots. But as you got more and more of these dual family, duplexes, quadplexes, 2 houses, 3 houses, 4 houses, 6 houses, all sharing courtyards, then in order to carry in the courtyard, King Solomon decreed they need to join in the eruv. All right, let's read our Mishnah. Now is the case, well, what if you share that courtyard with somebody who not only didn't join in the eruv, but who cannot or will not join in the eruv? That is what we're opening with in the first Mishnah of chapter 6. By the way, if you have questions and comments, I'll be coming to them at the end of the class. Here's our Mishnah. One who lives with an idolater in a courtyard. Now it says idolater. Some people look at idolater as non-Jew. But that's not what it says. An idolater is a kind of reasonable translation. But why don't we get a little more literal? What does the Hebrew actually say? It says one who lives with ha'oved kochavim. One who lives with a star worshiper. All right? So that's what we're going to use, is the word that's actually used in the Mishnah. So one who lives with a star worshiper. It's kind of interesting when you think about who are the star worshipers today, right? People who are getting their values from stars. Star worshipers. We might think, who are the star worshipers in modern society? All right, one who lives with a star worshiper in a courtyard, or with someone who does not accept the laws of eruv, that person restricts him from carrying articles from his house into the courtyard. right? It's like one who didn't join in the eruv. So now you can't carry. You because you live with this guy. He can't join in the eruv, and he's going to prevent you from carrying. This is very problematic. It doesn't say whose teaching this is, but as we're going to see, it's an unattributed Mishnah that is attributed to Rabbi Meir. This is Rabbi Meir's ruling. One who lives with a star worshiper in a courtyard, or with someone who does not accept the laws of eruv, that person restricts him from carrying articles into the courtyard. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says the star worshiper doesn't restrict a person living in a courtyard with him unless there are two Jews living in the courtyard along with the star worshiper, right? So at least 3 houses. And they would restrict each other if they didn't join in an eruv. So they have to make an eruv in this courtyard. And now that they're making an eruv in this courtyard, there's going to be a problem if there's also a star worshiper or one who doesn't submit to the laws of eruv also living in that courtyard. Rabban Gamliel said there was an incident with a Sadducee. The Sadducees were a sect who did not submit to the oral law. They didn't believe in the oral Torah, so they didn't submit to the authority of the rabbis, of the sages. So there was an incident with a Sadducee who lived shared an alley with us, right? He was in a courtyard that shared an alley with us, with our courtyard in Jerusalem. And he relinquished his rights to us. So this was a Jew who didn't submit to the laws of eruv, and he relinquished his rights to us so that we could use the alley. And Father told us, so Father would be Rabban Gamliel, right? This is Rabban Gamliel said there was an incident. Wait a minute. So who's he talking about? Shimon ben Gamliel? His father was Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Exactly. So Rabban Gamliel said, and his father, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, so the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, told us, hurry and carry out the utensils to the alley before the Sadducee carries out his utensils into the alley and restricts you. Right? So even though they somehow made an arrangement, he's saying that arrangement could fall apart. Make sure you carry in that alley to preserve your right to carry there. And Rabbi Yehuda said actually that that's the wrong transmission of that teaching. Actually, what he said was, what Rabban Gamliel's father said was, hurry and attend to your needs in the alley before Shabbos begins, before that Sadducee carries out his utensils and comes to restrict you. That second part of the Mishnah we're going to study more tomorrow, not today. But the first part, one who shares a courtyard with either a star worshiper or somebody who doesn't submit to the laws of eruv. That's the case that we are looking at. All right. Let me get to where I am in my notes. Okay. All right. So the first thing we see is that Sadducee, one who doesn't submit to the laws of eruv but is a Jew, will restrict a person from carrying in his own courtyard if they haven't made an arrangement for different reason than the star worshiper will restrict, right? So one is a Jew who doesn't submit to the oral law. The other is a star worshiper, right? Some kind of idolater who worships the stars. Let's talk about the star worshiper. In order to not be restricted in carrying, now you can't have an eruv with him. He can't join your eruv. He can't deposit food in that communal food stash because he's a star worshiper. He's not a Jew. This is an arrangement that Jews make together. Nor can he relinquish his rights like the Jew that forgot to join, and we go to him on Shabbos and say, hey, you didn't join the eruv. We want to be able to use the courtyard. He says, fine, I relinquish my rights. He makes an oral declaration, and it's done. The star worshiper can't do that either. How do we permit the courtyard to the other residents of the courtyard so they can carry on Shabbos? They joined in an eruv with each other. What arrangement can they make with the star worshiper who lives in their courtyard? The answer is they rent his property rights from him. Now, this is very much a nominal arrangement. It's just like they say to him, we want to rent from you your rights to pile utensils in the courtyard on Shabbos, right? He's still going to be able to walk through there. He's still going to be able to carry through there. But they're going to rent from him some kind of a right in the courtyard that isn't going to restrict him from doing anything, but that he officially gave it to them. and they can rent it. And so then the question is, well, okay, so what kind of rental is that? Is it a formal rental with a contract and we have to pay him a lot of money, or is it a token rental? So then the Gemara explains, no, it only needs to be a token rental. What does a token rental mean? It can even be less than a penny. A peruta is like the equivalent of a penny. It's the smallest unit of money, and it can be even less than the value of a peruta, what they're renting from him. It can be an oral arrangement. Doesn't even have to be explained why they're doing it, but they have to have some kind of arrangement that they made. They had a conversation with their neighbor in the courtyard who was a star worshiper, and they said, we need to rent your rights in our courtyard so that we can carry there on Shabbos. The sages comment about this. The star worshiper is going to be suspicious. He's going to think, are these Jews trying to trick me? Are they trying to make some kind of permanent arrangement where I'm going to lose something? He might even wonder, are they engaging in some kind of sorcery? Obviously they're not. They're just making an arrangement so they can carry there on Shabbos. But because this conversation is awkward and not easily had, it actually accomplishes the goal of the sages in making this decree. Why? Because they don't want Jews sharing courtyards with star worshipers. Why? For a lot of reasons. Number one, sometimes star worshipers can be dangerous. There were many times when, the star worshipers would get angry at the Jews and want to kill the Jews or turn in the Jews and, lie about them and get the Tsar's army or the Persian army or the Babylonian army or the Roman army, to come and take care of the Jews and eliminate the Jews. It was fear of the non-Jewish neighbors. And so it'd be better to live separately. You should have good relationships with your neighbors, but do you have to share the same courtyard? So that was one of the policy reasons for making it difficult, where you have to enter this arrangement and he might not want to. And if he says no, I won't let you lease any of my rights in my own courtyard, then you don't have that arrangement and you can't carry there on Shabbos. Now, this is, according to Eliezer ben Yaakov, only in the case where 2 Jews or more live in that courtyard with the star worshiper. According to Eliezer ben Yaakov, if 1 Jew shares a courtyard with a star worshiper, there is no decree. He doesn't have to enter into an arrangement with him. He doesn't need an eruv at all. It's as if there's only 1 Jew living in the courtyard, and we don't worry about the star worshippers. Now, there was a conversation between Abaye bar Avin and Rav Chanana bar Avin in the presence of Abaye, and they said, well, it seems that Rabbi Meir's view is more reasonable because what he's saying is that the residence of a star worshiper is a residence, and so it doesn't matter if there's 1 Jew or 2 Jews or 3 or 10 Jews living there, he's going to restrict and we have to deal with him. But it seems like maybe what Eliezer ben Yaakov is saying, we're not sure what he's saying, because is he saying that the residence of a star worshiper counts as a residence, or it doesn't count as a residence? And Abaye interrupts them and says, no. Rabbi Meir does not hold that a star worshiper's residence is a residence. Right? It doesn't count as a residence. It doesn't mean that they're, not human or something. It just means as a legal principle and the effect that it has on whether we need to join the rights of our residents with the rights of his in the courtyard in order to carry there on Shabbos. According to Rabbi Meir, no, a star worshiper's residence does not count as a residence. It's a non-residence, right? It's not the residence of a Jew, and therefore, for matters of making an eruv, it doesn't count as a residence. Rather, they agree, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, they agree that the star worshiper's residence is not a residence, and they disagree on why the sages decreed that the star worshiper owning a residence in the same courtyard with Jews restricts. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is saying the star worshippers are suspected to want to kill Jews. So, since 1 Jew won't live alone with the star worshiper, the sages didn't make a decree about 1 Jew. right? It wasn't needed. They're not going to make decrees unnecessarily. But it definitely often happens that they have, multiple Jews living with one star worshiper, so they're not afraid since there's only one of him and many of them. So there the sages decreed and said, well, you're going to have to deal with that guy because he's going to restrict you, even though his residence is not a residence and it shouldn't count. We're saying that it does count. You need to make this arrangement with him or you're not going to be able to carry in your courtyard. And says Abaye, Rabbi Meir is saying that Jews do sometimes live solo with a star worshiper, just one Jew and one star worshiper sharing a courtyard. And so the sages made that decree to even include the case of one Jew. And he also is going to have to deal with the star worshiper and have a conversation with him and lease some kind of rights if the Jew is going to be carrying in that courtyard on Shabbos. Okay. But since people don't really want to have these awkward conversations and it's difficult and you might not even be able to secure that right? Like when you're buying the house, you may not know for sure that the star worshiper will let you have those rights. And in fact, he might change his mind later and then you could lose the right to carry in your courtyard. So lest that happen, people will sort of, look to live somewhere else. And the sages didn't really want Jews sharing courtyards with star worshipers and coming under their influence and wandering off the path of Judaism because they're coming under the influence of these idolaters, the star worshipers. Okay. And then we said, okay, and then how is the arrangement made? And it can be even the value of a penny. We already covered that. And then they look at some additional cases to clarify what we're saying here. That what about a star worshiper who is away, right? Well, let's say we share the courtyard with a star worshiper, but he's away during Shabbos. We weren't able to make an arrangement with him, and now he's away. Does he restrict us from carrying in our courtyard if he's not even here, but he owns a house that's here? And likewise, what about if we share the courtyard with a Jew? There's two Jewish families living in the same courtyard. One of the families is away on vacation, and they didn't make an eruv before that family left. Are we restricted from carrying in our courtyard by people who aren't even here? So the star worshiper who's away restricts only if he is in the city and he may show up. But according to Rabbi Meir, if he's away and he's not coming, he doesn't restrict. And we learn, and in terms of the Jew who is away, and the Jew who is away, he does restrict. Even though he's away, we can't carry. Not because his residence is a residence that we have to deal with, even though it's empty, because if it's empty, it's not a residence. But the sages decreed that a Jew who shares that courtyard with you, even though he's away, you need to have some kind of arrangement with him, an eruv, or get him to nullify, his rights in it, because if we just assume that we can carry when he's away, we may come to make a mistake that we just get used to carrying in the courtyard without making an eruv with this absentee, Jewish homeowner. And then when he is there, we forgot to make an eruv with him. We're carrying, and then we realize, oh my gosh, he's home. We needed to make an eruv with him, and we didn't. So protect us from coming to make that error. The sages said, if you have a Jewish neighbor in your courtyard, you need to make an arrangement with him, even if he's away. He restricts. Some say he only restricts if it's possible that he'll come home. He's in the city, but not at home. But if you know that he's, on another continent and definitely not coming home this Shabbos, then you don't have to worry about it. And then we hear at the end of this DAF, which we're coming to right now, and Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel that the law follows the view of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, meaning that if you share a courtyard with a star worshiper or with someone who doesn't submit to the authority of the sages, and it's just you and him, he doesn't restrict you. You don't need to make an eruv, and you can carry in that courtyard. But if there are two Jews who would restrict each other if they didn't have an eruv, and they share the courtyard with a star worshiper or a Sadducee, somebody who doesn't submit to the authority of the rabbis, then they do have to secure the rights from him. They have to make an eruv with each other, and they have to secure those leased rights from the Sadducee or the star worshiper. Says Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, that's the law. Says Rav Huna, it's not the law, it's the custom. It's the accepted custom. We don't teach it as the law, but that's what everybody does. And we teach it as a custom, not as a law. Says Rabbi Yochanan, people are accustomed to follow the view of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. It's not even an established custom. It's what the people came to do. And that's just like Simchas Torah. It wasn't decreed by the sages. It was like the people were just doing it in all the synagogues around the Jewish world, that they were, ending the Torah, the yearly reading on Simchas Torah, and beginning it again. And so Simchas Torah came up from below. It came up from the people. And likewise, this view somehow came up from the people. And Rabbi Yochanan says, we follow it. But it's the people were just following this established custom that if one Jew lives with a star worshiper or a Sadducee, someone who doesn't submit to the authority of the rabbis, he doesn't need to make arrangements with him. But if two Jews or more, they need to make an eruv with each other and they share a courtyard with this other person, they need to make an arrangement with him. That's a custom that is followed. Okay, that is what we needed to learn. And then the question that I asked at the beginning, what is the fruit? What is the fruit of this whole discussion? What is the fruit of this whole discussion? If we apply it to ourselves today, some of us share courtyards with other people, some of us don't, but all of us should really think carefully about, if we can, when we move somewhere, we should choose our neighbors wisely. Once we're moved in, we should have good relationships with our neighbors. We should know who they are. We should acknowledge them. We should be in conversation with them. We should make sure that our neighborhood has values consonant with what everybody in the neighborhood would like to see happen, so that all of us can be fruitful together. And that if there are neighbors whose values are not consistent with mine, then I should be careful. I should keep an appropriate distance. Maybe we're friendly, but we're not best friends. Maybe we're best friends, but, we draw distinct boundaries, how close we're going to get. We're careful. We have to draw correct, appropriate boundaries between us and others so that they may be fruitful and we may be fruitful, right? Demarcating when we're cooperating together and becoming spiritual partners and when we're not, and being methodical about it, thoughtful about it, putting some thought into how we can flourish and how they can flourish, how we can each be as fruitful as possible to fulfill the first commandment that was given to us by God. We are all children of God who not only were made to be fruitful and multiply, we were commanded to be fruitful. And that is why submitting to God is the ultimate freedom. Because when you realize that you were not just made to be fruitful, but you were commanded to be fruitful. God gave you the ability to fulfill your mission. How do you know? Look at all the fruit that you're already making and ask how you can make more. All the fruits that you're there providing to others, the good deeds, the support, the wisdom, the kindness, the relationship, the just being solid and being there for people, the things that you create, the goodness, the causes that you support, the writings that you produce, the decorations you put up at a party, the gala that you volunteered to organize, the work at the food bank that you agree to do, that you step up to do, that you run to do. These are all fruits that you are bearing in this world. Let me look at your comments and questions. Carolyn Dobson Chavez, this additional definition of how to be fruitful as well gives great comfort and solace to those who do not have children for various different reasons. Absolutely. That's absolutely right. That's a separate commandment, and it comes first. Be fruitful is said before increase and reproduce. Be fruitful is something else. Obviously, the finest, some of the finest fruit we can give is our children. What compares to that? But it's not our only fruit. There's so many fruits that we produce, and we're charged with producing more. more of the best fruit we can. Bill Eldridge. This particular episode is proving deeply helpful for me and applicable to my own religious tradition. Your insight gave me an insight to my own tradition. Baruch Hashem, Bill. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yosef Shum. Never thought that be fruitful was a separate thing. Now you heard. Victoria Ray Degan. I'm inspired. Raul Dalton. Shalom and Shavua Tov from El Salvador, Central America. It's my first time. Bienvenido, Raúl. Qué bueno que estás con nosotros. Llegaste a tiempo, al tiempo perfecto. Nosotros vamos a hacer, we're going to make fruit together, right? We're all making fruit here. Welcome, Raul. And Sarah Liederstein, keep me far from a bad neighbor is in our daily prayers. That's exactly right. We say it every day. Keep me far from a bad neighbor. It's a very difficult and awkward thing when we end up sharing a place with a tough neighbor. If possible, choose neighbors wisely, if possible. And if once we're stuck with a neighbor, make the best of that so that he can be fruitful and you can be fruitful. My friends, that's what I've got for us this evening. Sending you great love. These next couple pages, by the way, we're going to have some big wisdom digressions. There's a lot of fun coming up. Hope to see you tomorrow at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. All the best. Have a great week. And this year should be filled with blessings for you and all your loved ones.